Hi, welcome back to the shop. Thanks for stopping by. This week's video I'm going to make another maple, burl, and resin hybrid bowl. And I thought I'd spend a little bit of time in this video going through the process of how I prep the blanks, what I do with the wood, kind of how I set up the molds and things like that. On a solid bowl or a solid burl hybrid blank, you can rough turn a one-piece burl so that it fits a plastic bowl that you have that you want to use for a mold, and then pour your resin in around it, and it's not nearly as difficult. But when you get into piecing burl wood together, there's a few things you want to look at. One is you want to try and match your woods up, or at least I try to. And these ones are very similar in color once you get them down sanded a little bit, so they're going to match up pretty nicely. The other thing is you want to look at how they're going to lay out in your finished piece. And so this bowl is going to be sort of like a river type bowl. And so if you can see, I'll have down in the center, I'll get the profile in the bottom, which is exactly what you're looking at there now. And then you got to consider the rim of the bowl and what the profile is going to look like going in, what the wood is like on the bottom where you're going to cut into it. And so if I make this bowl with a curve, a typical curve, what I'm going to see on the edge of my bowl is I'm going to have this profile here. So it's not so much what's out here like now, but it's going to be turned in. And so some of this may go away. Some of this very tip may stay, depending on the radius of the bowl that I turn. So you got to kind of look at that and see where things are going to land. A few other things you need to do is you need to make sure if there's any crevices like this that you get the bark out of them. Now these burls are stabilized in cactus juice resin, so there is a little bit of residue left on them. You need to get rid of that as well, because the aluminite resin doesn't adhere to that well, and it will leave uncolored voids in your piece. So once you've got your burls, you know what size you're going to make, and you've picked out whatever you're going to use for a mold. This one's an ice cream tub, and what I've done with this is I put a piece of plywood in the bottom. I've hot melt glued it in there, and I've sealed the plywood with sanding sealer, so if there's any moisture in it, it doesn't come up into my blank or get into my resin and discolor my resin, because it can make it cloudy. Now, the reason that I put the plywood in there is this is the exact same container. You see the lip that's down in here? Well, the blank doesn't sit in that well. It wants to tip it, and also there's a little indentation in the bottom, which is holding things up a little bit as well. And so I want to use the least amount of resin I can to get the best bowl blank that I can get out of it. And with that, it's just going to give me too much space around the outside, and it'll hold up my piece, and the bunch of resin will get into the bottom of it. So I've got this prepped and sealed, and I put a bead of hot melt glue around it, and then I chamfered my burl edge so that it'll sit back tight to the edge of the container. And again, that just keeps you from having to pour extra resin around it. It's not perfect, but it's certainly better than it was had I not done that. So they're going to go in there like that, and we're going to cast the resin in between it. So the other thing that I like to do, so I'm not guessing on resin, and I've shown this in another video, but I'll show it again, is I like to fill the gap with rice so that I have a good idea, within reason, of how much resin I need. So of course the rice is never going to be quite as compact as the resin is, and you want to make sure that you fill all the gaps there around the outside of it as well. So there, I got a pretty good idea now that if I put that much volume of resin in there, I'll have a good idea of what I'm going to need. So I'm just going to dump that back out into another container. I'll put it back into this one for now. And after you've done that, you do want to take your blank back out, check in all these little pieces, all these little crevices, make sure that there's no opportunity for rice to be stuck in there still, because you don't want a piece of rice in your finished work. This one's good. Now this one's got a couple of crevices in it. And here's the other thing, if you see how far in this goes, I'm not sure if you can see it well in the camera or not, that goes in a long ways. You want to take a Dremel tool, just a regular routing out bit on your Dremel, you can see that or not, and you want to get in there and get all that loose stuff out, and that's where your cactus juice resin will stay too. So I can see down in there and there's no rice anywhere in this now, so we're good. All right. Important when you start this to have everything at your workstation, because I said this in every video of resin that I've done. You have 12 minutes when you put the two parts of the resin together before it starts to set up. So this is mold release, and especially on that plywood, I want that to come off clean. If it doesn't, I can turn it off, but I'd rather not. Get that little piece of rice out of there. Okay, so I'm going to put a little dab of hot melt glue on the very bottom of these. And that's just to hold it until I have it cast. Once I got it down there, I'll put some weight on it so it doesn't move. So we'll stick that down good. And it doesn't stick great with mold release, because if it did, it wouldn't really be worth putting on in terms of mold release. So I have that. I'm going to set that out of the way. So now I'm ready to go. I've got my sticks ready for when I get it poured that are going to sit across the top of it, and a weight to go on top of it to keep everything from floating, because it will certainly float. So I'm ready for when I'm ready to put it in the pressure pot. When I have your compressor pumped up, have your pressure pot ready to go with nothing in it, cover off. And all the pieces that you're going to need to go in there, you want to have them handy before you get to that point. So the next step is we need to measure how much rice we have. So what I'm going to do is divvy it out into two containers that I'm going to measure out A and B parts of the resin. That was pretty close. That was a lucky guess. So the other thing that's important is to get similar containers, and I mean similar as in identical. These are two yogurt containers, same brand, even the same flavor. But when you weigh them, you don't want the weight of the container being different from one to the other, because it is really important that these are done in exact amounts by weight. This is not done by volume, it's done by weight. We're only measuring volume, so we know we have enough to fill the gap. So I can see on the outside through the side of this where I need to be. It's right there. Now I'm going to go to at least there, and I will probably go a little bit more. All right, so we get rid of the rice. Make sure that you knock the dust out of these so that they're very clean. You want to have a good digital scale. Now let's go to the line, and then I go beyond a bit. Because as I said before, this is gonna settle in more than the rice will. So that's 694 grams. That was part B. So the customer who wants this bowl has asked for orange, very similar to one that I did in the past video. So I'm going to start out and put the B in. It's important where you were meticulous in weighing it out accurately, that you make sure you get it all back out. Now, because this is not a complicated pour, I'm going to put these together now because I know that I have lots of time. Okay, now we'll mix these up. You can see the little striations in that. You need to mix it until those are gone. Now you can see there's no swirls left in that, so it's good. Alright, so Illuminate, dye. I like to put a base color in on all these. I don't like transparent. I like it to be fairly dark. little bit of this goes a long way. This is Caster Choice Blaze Orange. And I'm going to put 2 teaspoons of this in here. I'm going to put the same amount of the white. And if you can put that in a lump right in the center, as much as you can, and push it in with your drill, your paddles on your mixer, it makes a big difference in how much easier that goes down in, as you can see. So you can shove the whole bunch right down inside. Alright, then I take my stick, just to make sure that everything got done off the outside edges and mixed in good, whether it's the resin itself or the powder or the ink, either or. It gives you an idea what that's going to look like. Now when you pull your stick out, you can tell by the coverage on the stick how transparent it's going to be. And that's not too bad. I do think I'm going to give it another couple little drops of orange. I did this on a pattern that I put out in a video a while ago, and it was really nice color, so I don't mind trying to duplicate that color. Okay, so now we are good, and as you can see, my glue did not hold. We're going to take our chances without it because the mold release is working great. Now that likely seems like a lot more than we needed, and you can see they're floating already, so we're going to fix that. That burl's back where it needs to be. This burl is back where it needs to be. Now we'll put some weight on so they can't go anywheres in the pot. The weight's just clear of the surface, so I feel pretty good we have lots in there. Get into the pressure pot, and we'll be back when the time comes to demold it. Okay, so the mold has been in the pressure pot overnight. It looks good. Perfect. We'll get her on the lathe and see what we can make out of this. So I marked center on the piece on both sides and I chucked it up between the two centers. And I can turn most of the outside from here with the exception of the bottom. And I want to apologize for the hum in the first part of the video. I was drying some cones in a toaster oven and I didn't realize that the camera would pick up so much sound. So make sure that we don't have that on the next time we film. So I'm using Easy Wood Tools negative rake roughing tool here, which works well on the resin. You can see as I spin the blank here that there's a little thin coating of resin covering the outside of the burl wood, so we're going to want to take that off to expose all the outside of the burl without that little thin layer of resin over top of it. So that'll be the final dimension of the outside on the top of the bowl. I'm just working on the shape now. You can see the resin comes off in nice little stringy shavings, but the stabilized burl doesn't really make shavings. It comes off more of a powder and a dust, and that's the fines that you see. So, as always, when I'm turning resin, I have a full face respirator on. Here I'm making the tenon that'll hold the bowl when I turn it around so that I can hollow out the inside later on. And it's a dovetail shape which fits in the jaws of my Vicmark chuck. Now I'm just using a skew chisel and it's flat, which works like a negative rake scraper, just to clean up some tool marks and smooth out the cut. Saves a lot of sanding. And here I've got the first sanding done with the coarsest grit. I think I started out at 100 on this, just wiping it down with denatured alcohol or methylated spirits from my friends in the UK. Gives you an idea what the colors are going to look like at the end. And I've got to sand it up to 320 grit. I'm starting with Yorkshire grit, the regular. This gives you about the equivalent of 1,000 grit sandpaper finish without the dust. You can see how shine comes on that. And once we're done with the regular Yorkshire grit, we go to microfine, which takes it up to about the equivalent of 2,000. Now I find on the wood there's not a mark left on the wood when you use the microfine, but I do sometimes see small scratches still in the resin. So when I finish with that, I do go back and sand it up to 2,500 grit with paper. Now the outside's finished except for the bottom, so I'm going to take it out from between the centers. Take the center out. The headstock is hollow, so you just pop it out with the bar from the back side. Now it's mounted in a 4-jaw chuck, which just threads onto the spindle. And the spindle locks. And then you tighten it up with the Allen key. And then this is just tightening the jaws on the tenon itself to make sure that they're good. And a little test run to make sure it came back into balance again, and it was perfect. So now we start hollowing out the inside. And I'm using the traditional bowl gouge for this because it's much faster. But it does not necessarily cut the resin as well. But while I've got lots of material to take away, I use this one first. I'll just back the camera angle out a little bit here so you can see how the resin shavings come off, just in a little rainbow. Very fine. They make a huge mess in the shop, but they're fun to cut. I left the tailstock up just for extra support until I get most of the hollowing done on the inside until it gets to be in the way. Now I'm just shaping what will be the rim of the bowl with the #1 hollower with a negative rake carbide on it from using wood tools. And I've gotten everything hollowed out that I can with the tailstock up, so now it's out of the way. Switched over to the other side. It's just an easy wood negative rake finishing tool. And the center isn't turning as fast as the outside, so it's a lot slower cutting this out. You see that I just lowered the tool rest just a little bit there. A little tiny bit high. You want to have your tool set to the center of the bowl. So while working away on the inside here, I just want to thank all the subscribers who signed up for the channel, especially the new ones who came on board last week. I really appreciate it. We are going to do a giveaway at 1,000 subscribers where we'll make a bowl very similar to this one, and the subscriber who wins the giveaway can choose the color of the resin, provided it's a color that you can make. And so share with your friends if you think they'd like to be involved in that. Thanks. So all the turning on the inside is finished now, and it's been sanded up to 320 and working out with Yorkshire grit. I skipped the sanding because it's not that exciting to watch. Now the inside's finished, so I can take it out of the fore jaw. This is a set of cold jaws where I can turn the bowl upside down and mount it in between those little studs and turn the bottom off. You always turn the bottom of the bowl concave so that it sits flat on the surface and doesn't rock. And I always finish the bottom of the bowl the same as the rest of it, up to 2500 grit. Now I'm going to do some buffing and just show a little bit of the second step of the buffing. This is the diamond compound. This takes out any tiny scratches that are left in the surface. We'll have some stills up at the end of the finished piece. Thanks again to everyone who subscribed, and thanks for watching. And if you like what you saw, please hit the like button, and if not, please hit the thumbs down button and leave a comment as to what you didn't like so we can improve. We'll see you next time.